Some stories are just so strange, so out there, they have to be fiction, right? Well, what if one of the most baffling tales of the 20th century, a story about a traveler from another dimension, wasn't just a story? What if this whole incredible mystery started with something as simple and as real as a passport? All right, picture this. The year is 1954. We're at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. It's buzzing. Post-war Japan is opening back up to the world. A well-dressed European man, probably middle-aged, walks up to the customs desk. He looks sharp, confident. He speaks fluent Japanese, French, a bunch of other languages. He looks every bit the part of a seasoned international businessman. Everything seems totally normal until he hands over his passport. So just for a second, put yourself in the shoes of that customs officer. You're handed a passport. It looks perfect. It feels real. It's even got what look like legitimate visa stamps, some for previous trips to Japan. But then you look at the issuing country, and it's a place you've never, ever heard of. A place that just doesn't show up on any map. What do you even do in that situation? Yeah, that was the big problem. The country was listed as Taured. The officer checks his lists. Nope. Asks his buddy in the next booth. Never heard of it. They even call in his supervisor. Still nothing. The document in his hands was flawless. The stamps looked good, but the country it was from, it was just impossible. So the authorities take this man into a little interrogation room, and they roll out a big world map. Okay, they say, show us where you're from. And without even a moment's hesitation, he points right to the tiny country of Andorra. That little spot between France and Spain? But here's the kicker. He's not confused. He's offended. He gets angry, insisting that the country in that exact spot has always been called Taured, and he's never heard of this Andorra place. What's so wild is just how sure he was. In his mind, it was our map that was wrong. He argued really passionately that Taured was this proud nation with a history stretching back 1,000 years. From his point of view, these customs officers were either totally incompetent or were pulling some kind of cruel prank on him. You can just imagine the terror dawning on him. He was a man completely out of his element. And the evidence just kept getting weirder and weirder. They look in his wallet, and sure enough, he's got all the usual European currencies, but mixed in with them are bills from Taured. He's got traveler's checks issued by a bank that, you guessed it, doesn't seem to exist anywhere in our world. Every single piece of his identity was this perfect paradox. It looked totally real on the surface, but it was all rooted in an impossibility. The authorities were completely stumped. What do? You can't really arrest him. What's the crime? Having a passport from a country you've never heard of? But you can't just let him walk out the door either. So they decide to detain him for the night at a nearby hotel. They put him in a room way up on a high floor. The window couldn't be opened, and they posted 2 armed guards right outside the one and only door. And this is where the story shifts from a bizarre airport mystery to a full-on supernatural event. The guards outside the door swore they never left their post. No one went in and no one came out. But when they opened that locked door the next morning, the room was empty. The man was gone. And it gets even crazier. All of his documents, that impossible passport, the strange money, all of it had also vanished from the airport's secure office. It was like he and the entire country of Taured had just been erased from existence. So, how do you even begin to explain something like that? The most popular theory, the one everyone loves, is that the man from Taured was exactly who he seemed to be, a traveler from another dimension. This idea taps right into the many worlds theory from quantum physics, this mind-bending concept that there are infinite parallel universes out there. So did this guy just accidentally slip through a crack between his reality, where Taured is a real place, and ours? It's an incredible idea, right? A man just crossing over from his world into our own by mistake. It's the perfect paranormal mystery. But what if the answer isn't in another dimension? What if it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, buried deep in the archives of an old newspaper? What if this incredible legend that we all know is actually built on a much more human kernel of truth? Okay, so this is where the real investigation starts. After years of digging by researchers and internet sleuths, a story that sounds remarkably similar turned up. But here's the thing. It didn't happen in 1954. It happened in 1960. And the key piece of evidence isn't some spooky story about a vanishing man. It's an actual official court record. I'd like you to meet John Allen Kochar Zegras. He is almost certainly the real man from Taured. Now, he was arrested in Tokyo in 1960, but not for having a strange passport. He was arrested for trying to cash fake traveler's checks, and when the authorities questioned him, he pulled out this crude, homemade passport from a country he totally made up on the spot. And when you actually put the legend and the reality side by side, the whole thing just falls apart. The legend says it happened in 1954. The arrest record says 1960. The legend's country was Taured, and it was in Europe. Zegras' made-up country was Taured, spelled T-U-A-R-E-D, and he claimed it was in Africa. But here's the biggest difference. The man in the legend vanishes without a trace. John Zegras? He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to a year in a very real prison. So how on earth does a petty con man become a paranormal icon? Well, it's basically a classic game of telephone, just played out over decades. You have a real arrest, it gets reported in the news. Then, as people retell the story, the details get fuzzy and twisted. A simple misspelling changes Twinnerd to Taured, and a boring real-world prison sentence gets swapped out for a much more exciting, impossible vanishing act. And just like that, a real con becomes an urban legend. So, why do we all remember the legend and completely forget the con man? Well, honestly, because the legend is a way better story. It taps into our deep-seated curiosity about the unknown. We want to believe there are parallel worlds and strange mysteries out there. And the story of the man from Taured gives us this perfect, tantalizing piece of so-called evidence. When you get right down to it, the story of the man from Taured isn't really about a visitor from another dimension. It's about us. It's about our love for a good mystery and how easily a real documented event can be twisted and transformed into a global legend. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many of our other modern myths started out as just a simple, forgotten headline in an old newspaper?